Boom, shellac, lock, boom. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live coming to you broadcasting on some really cool platforms called Facebook and YouTube. Maybe you've heard of them. Not sure. My name is John Todora. They call me the Sports Trader. And joining me in the little tiny box to my left over there is a man that they call the Sports Nerd. He used to work at Fox Sports, but now he works over at What's on Sports. His name is Lance Fernandez. Lance, how are you today, buddy?
John, this is the time that I'm really missing football. You know, we are weeks separated from Super Bowl 55. Good thing that there are off-season news that keeps us into the thick of things. But really, I can't wait for the new season starts around September.
Yeah, you know, I got to give the NFL credit, and I always say this. And actually, you did a good piece on it, or we talked about you doing a great piece on it, and then you ended up doing it and talking about like how the NFL is better than any other sport anywhere. Any other, really, to me, any of the programming, keeping people engaged in what's going on, even when there's no shows on. So when there's no games going on, people are still talking about what could happen in the upcoming season. Now, obviously, we made it through the Super Bowl. Now we're into what could be the beginning of free agency, which is usually like kind of jump starts the league. There used to be kind of a break between the Super Bowl and free agency, but now there's all sorts of like things that happen in between that keeps the NFL pretty like in the center of everyone's attention. Whatever rumors going on, now we got this quarterback thing this year. We've got the pre free agent period salary cap casualties, which we'll be talking about later on, and lots of other good stuff that we're going to go into. Before we do, though, I just want to remind everybody that we have a brand new thing over at whatsonsports.com. It's called the it's called the $2 Sports Club. If you join the $2 Sports Club today, you're going to get lots of really cool content, including all the content that we put out, even our exclusive VIP content. You'll get gambling news. You'll get daily fantasy news. You'll get all the inside information on MMA, NBA, Major League Baseball, NFL. Everything's over there, guys. It's all for only $2 at the What's on Sports website. Go over there right now and join the $2 Sports Club. It's a great way to support what we do. It's also a great way for you to educate yourself. Now, inside the $2 Sports Club, you're also going to get some really cool stuff, including a seminar that I'll be putting on once a month about sports trading. You get my brand new book, which is The Score Metric Secret, that teaches you all about sports trading. And also, we're going to have a special guest inside there this month, Michael Fernandez, who's a very popular, very famous mafia boss turned into kind of an evangelist slash public speaker. Michael's going to be in there doing a seminar on sports gambling and how the mafia was involved in the gambling. Now, and after the seminar, anybody who attends will be able to ask Michael Fernandez lots of really cool questions. So you guys are invited to go over there and be a part of that. Now, before we dive into anything else, as much as this isn't like huge news, Lance, this is actually like a really interesting topic that I saw. Yesterday, a video came out of Cam Newton at his own football camp. And we're going to talk about that in just a few seconds. I just want to touch on it really quick because I thought it was kind of controversial. Anybody that hasn't seen it will definitely want to talk about it. Stick around and talk about it. But before we do that, we're going to do some quick fire news, get everybody caught up on everything that's happened around the sports scene. Sports Nerd, it's all you. It's time for some quick fire news.
Okay, so first off, business news related to the NFL. So you might know Jeff Bezos, John, former CEO of Amazon. So he is interested actually to buy minority stock from the Washington football team. Now, Dan Snyder is alleging some of the minority owners of going up against him for him to be forced to sell the majority stock of the team. Ooh. So with Jeff Bezos potentially entering the Washington football team, do you see a possibility of him being a majority owner of that franchise?
Look, it's really hard if you don't understand how a company works, it's really hard for minority owners of stock in a company to push out a majority owner. It's the reason you keep the majority of your shares. So your minority owners can be as upset as they want to be, but their option at the end of the day is really just to sell their minority shares. Dan Snyder loves the Washington football team. He has not done a good job of being an owner of the team, if you would like my opinion on that matter. But Dan Snyder is the owner. He is the majority shareholder. And I don't see Bezos having an opportunity to really get in there and pry the Washington football team away from him. Now, with all that being said, at the end of the day, as much of a sports fan as Dan Snyder is, as much as Dan Snyder may truly love owning the Washington Redskins, among other things that he owns, Dan Snyder's a businessman. So if the price is right and the buyer can afford it, and I believe Jeff Bezos can pretty much afford anything he wants to. If he goes in and makes the right deal, Jeff Bezos very well could very possibly become the majority owner of the Washington Redskins. Now, I don't know where Dan Snyder's head is. I don't know what he's thinking. But as a businessman myself, I try not to get emotionally attached to the things that I own. And I've sold several businesses without any issue at all. Now, I'm not going to say when I sold those businesses, I didn't have a moment of like, oh, man, I can't believe I sold that business. It's happened. But at the end of the day, if you offer me enough money, just about anything except my family is for sale. So will it happen? Probably not. Could it happen? It could, Lance. It very well could.
Yeah, I believe that Dan Snyder, being the intelligent businessman that he is, I mean, he wouldn't reach his stature right now if he did not do good business dealings along the way. So could he ask for some Amazon stock in exchange for the Washington football team as well? Ooh. So that could be the question. And you know how valuable those Amazon stocks are in exchange for the football team that, let's face it, he did not run in the best of his interest and in the best of the fans' interest for nearly 2 decades. So it's time for a revamp in Washington, a new ownership, a new breath of fresh air, and start things anew for that franchise.
Yeah, it's a tough one, though. You know, anybody that buys a football team, first of all, you've got a tremendous amount of money. I mean, you've got just a shit ton of money. You're not buying a football team because it's going to be your sole source of income. You're buying a football team because that's a surplus money that you have. And it's not only is it a good investment, but you think to yourself, I can own a football team. I'm a huge football fan. I'm a sports fan. You look at Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban doesn't live off the Dallas Mavericks. Mark Cuban lives off the many businesses that he has. The Dallas Mavericks just happen to be one of them. Now, also, I don't know what I don't know the numbers, but let's just say that Dan Snyder bought the Redskins 10 years ago. Over the course of 10 years, I would imagine that team has maybe jumped up in value by 50%. So if he bought it for $300 million, it could very well easily be worth $500 million or even $1 billion. I don't know. Was there an evaluation on the Redskins? Did anybody throw one out there that like maybe something we can go by?
Yeah, we can check on that a little bit later. So
all right. I mean, look, if you knew the number, I think that's where the information would really come into, I'll tell you this, like you look at somebody like a family like the Rooneys, the Rooneys do have in Pittsburgh, they do have other businesses, but of course they are the majority shareholders in the Pittsburgh Steelers. What people don't realize is even though the Rooneys are majority shareholders, there are a lot of people who actually own the Steelers. There are people who actually have come in over the last 20 years, paid a small amount of money to buy a piece of the Steelers, and then sold their shares to somebody else. Now, the way that works is the majority shareholder gets an opportunity to say yes or no as to who they can sell their shares to because it's not publicly traded. They're privately traded stocks. So it's a little bit different. Now, I don't know how Green Bay works. I know Green Bay, a lot of the people that live in the town have invested in the Green Bay Packers. Completely different story. But it'd be interesting to know the actual value of the Washington Redskins. Did you pull that up?
I'm trying to look at it right now,
okay.
But
all right,
let's
I'm going to guess they're worth $1.2 billion. That's
I
my
believe
guess.
not. So we had this article before in What's on Sports, and if I'm not mistaken, so here's the range of where Washington is. So the highest valued franchise in the NFL are the Dallas Cowboys, and they're about $6 billion rather. $6 billion. Yes. And then the lowest valued franchise are the Tennessee Titans, which goes around $2.5 billion. So somewhere along that line, 2.5 to 6 are the Washington football team. So
really?
It could be closer to 2.5. It could be closer to 6.
Yeah, so I just Googled it really quick on my phone. The approximate U.S. value of the Washington football team is $3.4 billion. Yeah. Holy shit.
Talk about inflation,
That's crazy. Siri, what did Dan Snyder buy the Washington football team for? There's your real question right there. What did Dan Snyder pay? So what did Dan Snyder man, I got fat fingers. Snyder pay for the Redskins.
Okay. Here's a quick fact. So in 1999, Snyder bought the Redskins for $750 million. $350 million of it is borrowed money. So $400 million is his own.
Right. So If you could buy something for 750 million and sell it for 3.5 billion dollars 20 years later, I would say that 5 times your money is an incredible investment. I think if Jeff Bezos walks up and says, "I will pay X amount of dollars for your shares," I think Dan Snyder leaves. And I think that the Washington Redskins are better for it. Dan Snyder has not run a good operation, and I do not think he should be the owner of the Washington Redskins anymore. Now, with that being said, who the hell am I to say whether he should be the owner of the Redskins or not? I'm a Steeler fan. I'm happy that the Redskins are not the Washington football team is not a good team, because it's just less teams that are actually good. Now, I will say this, though, really quick. Snyder's made some really good moves. I think the coach that he hired is a good coach. I think they've done a better job drafting. I think they've done a better job overall of putting a team together. I thought the Redskins were on the come up last year. And if they continue to go in that direction, I think the Redskins could actually be a team, especially in the division they're in. They can go 6-0 in that division easily. It's not a good division. So as of right now, I think the Redskins are in a decent place. And if I'm Dan Snyder and we're on the come up like this, and I see us and our trajectory shooting straight up, I'm not selling. So
yeah,
what else you got? What else you got for news today?
Could increase the value of the franchise even more. So on to more business news of the NFL. So the NFL is actually asking for, picture this, 100% increase in TV rights deals from all of its partners. So just imagine, Disney agreed to pay for Monday Night Football in 2011 for $1.9 billion. So the NFL is now asking for 3.8 at least. So that's a 100% increase. And that goes across the board to all of their partner networks, CBS, Fox, everyone. So how would this affect the NFL coverage from 2021 and beyond?
We got our first person logging into the chat, by the way. This is from whose name I can't read. Sorry about that, buddy. I know it's in a different language here. I believe that's Arabic, and I cannot read it. I do apologize. But hello to you out there as well.
Yeah, hello to you as well.
Yeah, listen, what were we just talking about? I'm sorry, I got distracted by the
100% increase of TV rights.
Oh, yeah. So, that is ridiculous. So you think about Monday Night Football. Monday Night Football is 16 shows. Like, that's all it is. It's 16 TV shows. So for 16 TV shows, you're suggesting that the price could be as much as $3.8 billion? Yes. Is that what you said?
Yeah, 100% increase. They paid 1.9 in 2011.
It's impossible. It's impossible that they can make that kind of money. I mean, I don't know what the revenue is when you from ESPN or ABC or whoever's going to carry the show this year, but I don't know what the revenue is. But it is impossible to imagine that each game could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue brought in. I just cannot believe that that's possible. $3.8 billion is ridiculous. Ridiculous. That's $200+ million every game that needs to be sold in commercials. I just don't see that being something that they can do. I get it's a 3-hour show. I get it's a lot of commercials. I just don't know, man. I don't know what a TV commercial costs on a national show like that. I just don't know. And I just cannot possibly believe they can afford that. The NFL's in a pickle, though. They've got to charge more for their TV rights because they're not sure when they're going to be allowed to. They're not sure when they're going to be allowed to actually put people in the seats and make money. Sorry, I'm reading the chat at the same time. We got a chat from Not LeBron James saying, "So much money for a bunch of adult men playing ball and getting dirty." Yeah, that must be a girl. It's got to be a girl. She doesn't appreciate the product. Sorry, Not LeBron James. We're confident that you're a woman for some reason. But it is a lot of money. It is a lot of money. What else you got today?
So it's like having a Super Bowl every Monday. So just because of the ad rates that you put out. So how do you recuperate profit out of that? 3.8 billion.
Well, look, you're paying $3.8 million for the rights to broadcast the show. That does not count what it costs to produce the actual show. So you've got to fly in a whole crew. You got to set up everything. You got to hire. You're probably hiring people from like the local area. You've got to have gaffers. You got to have a sound crew. You got to have people to work the cameras. You got to have people to work the booth. You got to have people the actual video booth. You got to have the actual talent who does the show and announces the games. It's a ridiculous cost for them. It probably costs them $2 million a game just to actually put the crew there. I mean, I'm going to guess probably $3-4 million just to get people there, do the whole setup, broadcasting this thing over satellite. That's just crazy. It's insane to me.
Yeah.
Insane. What else you got today?
Okay, so on to lighter news. So Michael Pittman Jr. So he's wearing number 11 for the Indianapolis Colts, and apparently there's a new number 11 in town, quote unquote, and that's new quarterback Carson Wentz. But Michael Pittman is adamant not to give up the number 11, and they already had a discussion, him and Wentz, that Wentz is actually cool not having that jersey number. So is this a big deal, jersey numbers for NFL players, that we really have to talk about it in the quickfire news section?
Well, look, this is how it works. New guy comes on the team. He's a veteran. He's a big name guy. Usually he goes to whoever has the number that he wants. Says, hey, look, I know you got the number. I'll give you 50 grand for the number. I'll give you 20 grand for the number, whatever. It's usually some type of business deal. He buys the number off the guy. Michael Pittman is presenting this as if, from everything that I read, Michael Pittman is presenting this as if Michael Pittman said no, as if he said, I don't want to put this. I don't want the guy to wear a jersey. I'm going to wear it. Let me point out a few things. Michael Pittman's been in the league for 1 year. He was okay last year. He wasn't a superstar last year. He was okay. Tremendous amount of potential. Super talented young man. I think he's going to be a real surefire star in the league one day, but he's not right now. And Carson Wentz actually kind of is. Carson Wentz is a guy making $25 million a year. Carson Wentz is a guy that they just put up a third rounder for and a possible first rounder for. Carson Wentz is a guy who's being brought in to be the franchise player. He's going to be the guy that's on the program in Indianapolis. He's going to be the guy that's going to be the car dealerships are going to want to use as a sponsor in sponsorships. This is the guy there. And he's also the guy, if I need to remind Michael Pittman, who's got to be the dumbest guy in the NFL, he's also the guy that's going to be throwing the ball to Michael Pittman. So why would you not reach out? Like last year, the exact same thing happened in Tampa Bay. Godwin had number 12. Mm-hmm. So Tom Brady shows up, and Godwin, without even saying anything, says, Tom Brady gets the number. Of course he gets the number. He's Tom Brady. He's going to be my quarterback. Why in the world would I start off my relationship with my brand new quarterback by saying, you don't get something you want? I don't understand the logic behind Mr. Pittman. He's a young guy. That was a bad decision on his part. That's my opinion. How you feeling about that? You think you should just say, screw you, I'm going to keep it, or what?
So I do admire Michael Pittman's bravery for standing up to what he think is quote unquote right. But in between quarterback versus wide receiver in a quarterback driven league. So wide receivers do not have leverage, especially with this kind of stuff, especially with how many years they have endured in the NFL. So chances are that Michael Pittman will eventually crack and eventually give the number 11 to Carson Wentz if Carson Wentz really wants it. I mean, if Carson Wentz is really sincere that he wants a new start, then that comes with a new number with it. So, but if it doesn't, if he wants number 11 still, then Michael Pittman has no choice, because otherwise his stats will go down, because Carson Wentz will not throw him the ball every time they take the field.
Look, here's how this works. This is actually so simplistic. The veteran comes in. He offers you money for his number. If you say no, some coach somewhere is going to come up to you and say, listen, you had an opportunity to make $50,000 to give up the number. Now, because you don't want to give up the number and we want to keep the quarterback happy, who's the most important player on the team, we're going to take the number from you because it's not your number. It's our number. So now you get nothing. Now you were a jerk. You get nothing. And I think that if Carson Wentz truly wants the number, he's just going to, that's what's going to happen. But I think you make a good point. If I'm Carson Wentz and I'm coming from Philadelphia where things melted down, I'm saying, I don't need to be number 11. You don't have to remember that guy. Just remember this guy. This guy's going to be number 2 or number 3 or number 1 or number 7 or number whatever. That's who this guy's going to be. Remember this guy, because this guy's going to be someone that you're never going to forget. So forget about number 11, but you're never going to forget about this guy, number whatever my new number is. That's my guess. What else you got today for news?
Yeah, last quick fire news rather for today. So it's about Colin Kaepernick. So Takia Spikes, a former teammate of Colin Kaepernick, says that he believes that Kaepernick deserves a statue at the Smithsonian. So here's a quote. I think Colin Kaepernick I truly believe that he deserves some type of monument, a statue in the Smithsonian, because he was not a slave to money. He put everything on the line, but I applaud him simply because he decided to take a stand. So, what's your
Okay.
take on that, John?
I listen. I applaud Colin Kaepernick for having the fortitude to make a statement. I think that was brave of him. Colin Kaepernick did not put everything on the line because, first of all, he got job offers after that happened. We're going to talk later on. I want to do a segment on how wrong the traditional media is all the time, but this is one of them. This is like a story came out, the first narrative came out, and nobody ever broke from it. But the reality of Colin Kaepernick is Colin Kaepernick opted out of his own contract in San Francisco. So he had another year left. Now, it is debatable on whether or not San Francisco was going to continue to keep Colin Kaepernick on the roster because they had lost faith in him. So it is very debatable on whether or not they were going to keep him. But Colin Kaepernick opted out of his own contract thinking there would be a market for him to free agency. When he got out to free agency, people said, we don't think you're a starter, but we're willing to give you an opportunity. He had an opportunity in Miami. He showed up in Miami wearing a Castro t-shirt. And if you know anything about Miami and the culture of Miami and the Cubans that escaped Castro, yes, they were very upset by the fact that he showed up there and showed up in the Miami Herald. I remember seeing the photo of Colin Kaepernick showing up wearing a Fidel Castro jersey. That's an idiot. Colin Kaepernick had an opportunity that Ray Lewis worked out for him in Baltimore. He was supposed to have a job in Baltimore. The owner was ready to sign him and give him an opportunity to compete against Joe Flacco. Colin Kaepernick's girlfriend came out and said that owners of NFL teams are nothing better. They are kin to slave owners. That's what she said. The owner of Baltimore decided, I do not want this toxic environment around me. Everyone else is already telling me this guy's bad news. Now his girlfriend's basically calling me and all my other associates slave owners. We don't want you here anymore. Colin Kaepernick went to Denver and had an opportunity to play in Denver. It didn't work out there because he wouldn't accept the money that they offered him. Colin Kaepernick went to Seattle. Seattle wanted to offer to bring him in to back up Russell Wilson. He wasn't interested in a backup job. He instead wanted to go someplace where he can compete to start. Colin Kaepernick did not sacrifice anything. Colin Kaepernick had all those opportunities. He either screwed them up or turned them down. So the narrative that Colin Kaepernick is some type of martyr over what he did is completely and totally false. It is a false narrative. So he doesn't deserve a statue for giving up anything. Now, if you want to applaud him for taking a stand in something that he believes in, I'll stand right next to you and say that that's fine. I do not take a side on whether or not Colin should have stood or kneeled or whatever. If you want to make a statement, you can make a statement. I would personally prefer if he did it in his own time. I don't think that any employee at any time should make a statement while they're working. During his own time, I have no problem with it. So, but that wasn't my decision. That was something that already happened. So Colin Kaepernick did what he did. Whatever. I'm fine with it. You did what you did. You made your statement. Maybe it was time for someone to step up and do it. But him saying that and suggesting that he lost his job and he lost his money because of it is totally and completely false. And it's not my opinion. It's not my opinion that it's false. It's just false. It's just a false narrative. It's one that we continue to beat to death in the mainstream media because the mainstream media is fucking lazy and they don't do any of their own work and they don't pay attention to the facts once they've said something. No one ever comes back out and goes, "Hey, I think we got that wrong," and then they apologize for it. So it's a touchy subject for me simply from that point because the only reason I joined up with What's on Sports and took on this entire project was for that reason. I'm so tired of reading the same nonsense that I know is not true. And not just with Colin Kaepernick. I'm talking about local media. And again, we're gonna do a whole segment on this later because it's bothering the hell out of me. But this is what they do. And so, no, if you're asking me if he deserves a statue, if those are the reasons, if the reasons that you're asking me if Colin Kaepernick deserves a statue, if you're asking me if he deserves a statue because of the fact that he lost money and he lost his job, I say no. I say it's bullshit. It's not true.
Yeah, he did have some. Yeah, he did have some opportunities afterwards. It's just a matter of him taking advantage of those opportunities. Yes. And apparently, the sad fact about Kaepernick, and the sad fact for a pro football player that is that there's not too many opportunities that goes around. So if you miss 1 or 2 seasons, somebody will take your position. Somebody will take your job. It's unlike basketball, wherein there's a ton of leagues outside the United States, or even baseball, and you can play in Korea, Japan, wheresoever. So in the NFL, it's different. So
well, look,
once
let me just jump in real quick here. You're saying that once you leave, you can't get back. once you're in, it's hard to stay. There's always somebody younger than you that's trying to take your job, younger and cheaper. So Colin Kaepernick put himself in this $12 million, $10 million range in his mind, and nobody was going to pay him that. So, and look, I don't blame him for not wanting to play for less money. I wouldn't want to do this job for less money. I wouldn't want to do any job for less money than I make now. I just wouldn't want to do it. And if I had a lot of money and I didn't need to do it, I wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't. So I don't blame him for any of that. What I do take some umbrage with is the way that we paint the picture. So going back again, I don't blame him for anything. I take umbrage with the fact that we're saying that what he did was for X, Y, and Z, and that's not what happened. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to jump in there and say it. This is a subject I happen to be passionate about, and we probably should go to something else because I'm sure I'm just pissing off somebody inside the chat here. You know what? Let's go to something that a lot of things I'm taking umbrage with today. Let's go to something else that really bothered me. Now, you've seen the viral video that had Cam Newton in it, right? So the original video was released. There's a young kid. Let me paint the picture for everybody. Cam Newton's at a football camp. He's helping out a bunch of young kids. They look like maybe there's 100 kids there. And I don't know if Cam's the only NFL player that was there, but he is among the only people that I see in the frame who's an adult. And at one point, there's a kid in the background, and he's yelling out to Cam, "Yeah, well, you don't even have a job. You're a free agent. You're a free agent." To which Cam responds, "Yeah, but I'm rich. Yeah, but I'm rich," with kind of a smile on his face. Now, with that clip, that first clip comes out, the first reaction from the masses is, Cam Newton's an asshole. I can't believe he's talking to kids that way. My first reaction is, I can't believe this kid's talking to Cam Newton that way. And not that Cam Newton's like some special guy. I realize, to me, look, he's an NFL quarterback. I have a ton of respect for Cam Newton as an athlete, as a player, as a man. But the last part is the part that really I was getting to. Cam Newton's a grown man. Cam Newton's an adult. And this kid is talking to him that way in a way, to me, that's utterly disrespectful. No 16-year-old kid, however old that kid was, 16, 17-year-old, should ever talk to a grown-up that way. The very first thing that you should learn, especially if you're going to be a football player, is that you have to respect the people on the field with you. So if you've played in any organized sports before, it's among one of the first things that they teach you. Respect for the people that you play with, or respect especially for the people that are teaching you, because you don't know shit. You're 16 years old. You don't know anything. So the second clip that comes out, and you can correct me when I'm wrong here, the second clip that comes out is one that Cam releases, which is the full video where he's actually interacting with the kid. He's trying to talk to the kid, and the kid's like trying to show off in front of everybody. At one point, the coach steps in, tries to stop the whole thing. Cam's still just trying to like diffuse everything. Like, he's doing it with a smile. He's taking shit from the kid. Kid's giving him quite a bit of it. Like, it's coming at him, and Cam just smiles and kind of blows it off. I thought Cam handled it well. I thought the kid came off like a jerk. What's your opinion?
Yeah, so first things first, the worst part of it is that this kid did this act on Cam Newton's own camp. So why sign up for a camp of somebody when you will just malign him once you are there? You would just criticize. You would just say bad things about the one who organized the camp. You're very fortunate that you were accepted out of hundreds of potential applicants for that camp. Right? You were selected. So at least have that act of gratitude, to be humble enough that this guy who already made it in the NFL is already giving you a chance to learn something from a pro and apply it as you grow up, as you go up the ranks in pro football. And the second, indeed, what an honor. And the second part I would like to think of is that the guy, the young kid, the 16-year-old guy, released an apology, short letter on Twitter. And he was saying that it was his competitive spirit getting over him when winning the best of him. And if that's his competitive spirit, it's not placed in the wrong way. If that's his competitive spirit, I mean, he could have competitive spirit silently. He could bottle it up and then use it on the field. Not that way. I mean, trash talking indeed is adamant in pro sports, basketball, football. It happens, but you do not forsake the well-being of your fellow player. It's for you to motivate yourself.
Yeah, let me just touch on a couple things you said there. Number one, trash talk is fine. I think trash talk is fine within reason. First of all, you have to trash talk someone who you can back it up with. There is nothing that kid can do that Cam Newton couldn't do 5 times better. And I don't care if you think Cam Newton is over the hill or whatever you think. Cam Newton right now today, the athlete that Cam Newton is still 5 or 10 times the athlete that any 16-year-old is. Cam Newton is built like a Greek god. Have you ever seen him without a shirt on? I mean, the guy is just absolutely jacked.
Yeah, whatever
he's chiseled. Whatever he's eating, whatever his workout plan is, whatever genetics God blessed him with, Cam Newton is a freak athlete. He is absolutely amazing at just standing there and looking good. He can still run. He's still a beast. Now, he wasn't very accurate, and I was critical of Cam's play this year. But Cam Newton, and Cam Newton, the man who I've seen in several now public appearances, has always come off to me as kind of a nice guy. Good personality. I've also suggested on this show several times that I think Cam Newton belongs in the Monday Night Football booth or, the Thursday Night Football booth. Wherever he's going to end up, he's going to be a star inside of a booth because he's got tons of charisma. He's a good-looking guy. He knows the game. I just don't think he has the accuracy to be an NFL quarterback anymore. So that's my first thing. My second thing is those camps are not free. So either that kid's parents paid, or sometimes the school will get money together and send certain kids there. Somebody paid for those kids to be there. There was a fee involved so that they could go there. So somebody wasted money so that this punk ass kid can speak that way to Cam Newton. And lastly, that kid went viral. And even if he becomes a 5-star recruit, colleges are going to look back at what this kid did, and they're going to remember that. And this is going to cost that kid in the long run. And there is no way that kid and his friends have now seen that video, and that kid thinks to himself, I came off looking good there. I came off looking good. I came off looking like the hero. So to me, I think this is a lose-lose for the kid. I thought it was a win-win for Cam. If you had to score this, how would you score it?
It is 100% Cam Newton. So if it's a 12-round boxing fight, it's 120, 108 for Cam Newton. But Here are my final takes on this one. So Cam Newton actually devoted time to be in that camp. So be grateful for that. And number 2, it's a blessing in disguise for Cam Newton's free agency as well, because it shows some sort of maturity in him. So aside from this video wherein he was classy, he was trying to pacify the young kid by saying the truth, which is he is already rich. I mean, he made hundreds of millions in the NFL already, and he doesn't really need the money, plus endorsement deals here and there. So that's additional money for him. The second thing is he is already declaring how good Bill Belichick is, that he is a dope dude, that he is the most misunderstood guy in the NFL. So with those 2 videos, it's helping Cam Newton's cause in free agency, that teams will look at this and say, hey, he has some sort of maturity in him already. He's not the same guy anymore. Maybe we should take a shot on him. And the third part, the third part of this, so the fact that you mentioned that college teams will go back to this debacle by this Owens kid, let's face it, we live in a social media age right now. So even your dirt from 7 years back can be unearthed. So 100%. This one, he's 16, so he's just 2 years away from college. So it's easier to unearth that.
And they're going to Google this kid's name. You don't even have to look deep in social media. Just Google his name and see what comes up. You're going to be like, oh, that's that kid who was the jerk to Cam Newton. So it's just that easy. Listen, I'll wrap this up really quick. My opinion of Cam Newton's always been the same. I've always seen Cam Newton in a light. I saw Cam Newton one time in a YouTube video. He was talking to a crowd of people. He was like on stage doing like it was like a seminar or special guest somewhere. He was so delightful and engaging, such a great personality. Completely changed my opinion of Cam Newton. And again, go to a touchstone we talked about before, and something we're going to talk about later in the show. The national media has this thing, and they're going to beat it to death. Cam Newton made some mistakes in college, and forever, Cam Newton's going to be known as this guy who's a problem child. His career in Carolina was not one that was marred with a lot of problems. The players that played with him enjoyed playing with him. People thought Cam Newton was a leader. But Cam Newton has gotten this incredibly bad rap as a person. And it's almost like, God damn, you guys just won't leave this guy alone. most of what he has done has been a pretty decent acts of himself. Now, Cam Newton has had a couple moments where he's been a little upset after losses, and I don't have a problem with that. I don't want the reporter to go to the locker, talk to the guy who just lost, and have him go, "Yeah, well, we just lost. Who cares?" I want him to be upset. Okay, he handled some losses slightly immature in somebody else's mind, but in his own mind, he thought he handled them immature. He thought he handled them perfectly. He doesn't like to lose, and I got nothing wrong with that. I got a lot of respect for Cam Newton as a man. We're going to move on because there's some interesting, some interesting kind of controversy happening with what's going on. I'm going to let you handle this one. What's going on with DeVonta Smith, Heisman Trophy winner?
So there was this senior day at Alabama. So there were some scouts, there were some coaches from the NFL. So he was asked, would you rather pick Mac Jones or Tua Tagovailoa? And without hesitation, he chose Mac Jones. There could be reasons behind this because, number one, when you look at the numbers, of course, DeVonta Smith had more success when Mac Jones was under center for Alabama, especially in that last year in college when he won the Heisman Trophy. Now, he did have some success with Tua under center, but remember, there was a Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs that contends with him for the ball during those days in Alabama. So that's one reason. But I believe that the second reason behind it is that he's trying to uplift Mac Jones' draft stock. That a vouch from him, a testimonial from him, who is already high in the draft mock drafts that we have seen throughout the past few months, could elevate Mac Jones' draft stock that he would eventually land early in the first round, wherein he is projected late first or even second round. So I believe that behind the lines, this could be the main reason why DeVonta Smith is choosing Mac Jones, because Tua's already established, is already in Miami. And Mac Jones is just getting there. So this is a small referral from the Heisman Trophy winner to help his fellow teammate improve his draft stock in the NFL draft.
Well, look, I have to agree with you. I mean, who are you going to say is a better quarterback? Are you going to say the better quarterback is the guy who threw you 50 balls for 650 yards, or the guy who threw you enough balls that you actually won a Heisman Trophy with him? I mean, I think it's a pretty simple question that can easily be answered by this guy I just played with is the guy. Now, if you want to go to what the truth is a year ago, Tua was a much better player than Jones. How do I know that? Because Tua played and Jones didn't. It's really that simple. That the coach of the Alabama football team would not play a guy who was not better than another guy because he had a cool name or he just happened to like it. Saban picks the best player to play. That program is notorious for being a very competitive program where the best players play. Look at Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts was the man in Alabama. He lost his job to Tua in the middle of a national championship game. I mean, Saban doesn't give a shit. He'll yank you in the middle, put somebody in who he thinks is better, and if he's better, he'll ride him till he dies. So Tua was the better player at the time. Now, by all accounts, Mac Jones had a tremendous growth in his play and as a person over the last 12 months, and it showed on the field. And he very well could be a better pro than Tua Tagovailoa, whatever the hell, than Tua. But also, with that being said, I've also said several times in the show, I don't think Tua's done. I think a lot of people were disappointed in how he played, but I don't think Tua's done by any means. I think you're going to see a giant evolution in Tua this year. He's going to become a much better player. He's going to become better at studying film. He's going to understand when receivers are quote unquote open and not open. He's going to understand all of that. It's going to be a much different Tua this year in Miami. I guarantee it. And Mac Jones might be a good guy, but I don't think this is a huge story. I think it's, again, we have nothing to talk about. Let's make this into a big story. But in 30 seconds, you pretty much recapped the common sense of this. And then I just kind of repeated it. Now, we talked earlier today about how the season is going to play out and how the NFL has done a great job of keeping us engaged in what's going on. And part of that is what's going on in this little mini part of the pre-off season. Carson Wentz has been somewhat traded. Like, people don't understand, Carson Wentz hasn't actually been traded yet. Until the beginning of the league year, no one's been traded anywhere, which is probably why Deshaun Watson hasn't gone anywhere either. Because until the draft, it doesn't make a difference. If these guys are going for draft picks, you wait as long as you can. Philadelphia got rid of Carson Wentz now, made the deal right now, because their biggest fear was that somebody else was going to break free into the market and hurt the value of Carson Wentz. They were afraid that Deshaun Watson was going to end up being out there publicly, definitely going to be trade guy. You'd rather have Watson. They were afraid that Dak Prescott was going to break free into free agency, and that would bring the value of Prescott. I'm sorry, the value of the number 11 down. So where was I talking about? Oh yeah, so I was talking about what's happening here with going on. You have a huge list of guys that are going to be cap casualties right now. Now, these guys haven't been released yet, but they're going to be released. They've already been informed that they will be released from their contract at the end of the new year, which is, I think, March 16th or 15th. It's coming up.
March 16th is the end of the current NFL year. So March 17th is the first. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So who are the guys that we know right now are going to be released?
Okay, so just like we predicted in our article for the NFC East team, so the Philadelphia Eagles are parting ways with both Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson. So Jeffrey is still in his 4-year, $52 million extension, and he suited up for 7 games in 2020 and caught only 6 passes for 115 yards and a touchdown. So that's a dismal performance for somebody paid that high. And as for Deshaun Jackson, he was the fastest guy during his time, but this is not his time anymore. So unfortunately, father time just caught up with him. His production went down, and who knows if this will be the last stint in his glorious career in the NFL.
You know, Deshaun Jackson's a real shame. I really love that guy's game. He was a game breaker every time he was on the field. At any moment, Deshaun Jackson could have gone for 200 yards receiving and then had another 150 yards in returns. Any time he could have gone like that. The guy just couldn't stay healthy. It's really just a shame. Just as there's something to be said for those small receivers, those really dynamic athletes. Some of them most of them actually just can't stay healthy and stay on the field. NFL's a rough game. Who else you got?
Okay, so the highest team with the cap deficit are the New Orleans Saints. So they have like over $69 million over the cap. So they need a lot of shedding to do. And they're starting it with one of their offensive linemen. So they are letting go of offensive guard Nick Easton. And letting him go will save them $5.875 million in cap money. So aside from him being a cap casualty, actually, he doesn't make sense being in the roster anymore because they already have Andrew Speed and Cesar Ruiz. So he mainly serves as a backup. So that is the start of the cost cutting for the Saints. And they still have a long way to go after this.
Yeah, that cap situation is an absolute mess. Let's imagine that they had the extra 15 or 20 million that they would have had if there was no COVID. They were still going to be 30 or 40 million over the cap. Like, it was still going to be a mess. Now, I think for the Saints, I think we're eventually going to hear that Drew Brees is going to retire. I don't know what his dead money look is. I don't know how that's going to work out, but that's going to be a huge hit. Saints are going to be a real like Saints, Steelers. You know, to me, those are two of the teams that are usually competitive that are going to struggle to be competitive this year because, unfortunately, they were going to be in bad salary cap positions anyway. They pushed money into the future so much, restructuring contracts, and I don't know how they're going to get out of it. I don't know how either team's going to put together a team. It's going to be really amazing to watch from a financial standpoint. For those of you that love the game on the field and off the field, it's going to be very interesting to me to see how these guys are going to do this. Who else you got that's already been released?
Yeah, so just to add to Drew Brees, actually they're renegotiating his contract so that it would appear that he will only earn a $1 million base salary in 2021. So that would save a lot of dollars on their end. But as it stands, Drew Brees actually has a dead cap of $22.65 million for 2021. So it's still big money for the New Orleans Saints. So speaking of another team in the NFC, and I believe that they're doing this because they're anticipating for somebody else coming. So it has been reported in the past few days that the Carolina Panthers have been the front runners for a Deshaun Watson in exchange for Christian McCaffrey, of course, and a bevy of draft picks. So they have started to clean house. So one of the guys that they releasing come March 17 is safety Trey Boston, who has 2 years left in his contract. So he did have a good year actually in Carolina last season, but he's just too expensive for them to be able to continue to pay. Another guy that they're releasing is defensive tackle Kawan Short, who is one of the longer tenured players in Carolina. So he ends his 8-year tenure with the Carolina Panthers. So
he's been to the Pro Bowl before too.
Yes, these two guys will definitely attract a lot of attention in the free market. And it could be an indication that they are really freeing up money because the wheels are starting to turn for that Deshaun Watson deal.
So look, first of all, let me just touch on the Watson deal. I think this is the best deal I've heard so far. Honestly, I thought the Jets could put together a better package, but when you put together a name guy like Christian McCaffrey, the deal that I saw was they were talking about moving McCaffrey and Bridgewater over to Houston, along with I think 3 first-round picks, which is like just an amazing draft haul, just amazing haul in general for the Texans. The Texans remain whole. They get Bridgewater as a quarterback. Is he Watson? No, but he's just a decent quarterback. I think Bridgewater has some upside still in him. You get a Christian McCaffrey who probably will never be the Christian McCaffrey that we saw before. Something about running backs getting an injury. They just never seem to come back and be those great players that they were. He had a lot of trouble staying on the field last year. But if you get a semblance of what he was, just a hint of Christian McCaffrey, you keep the fan base kind of happy. You free up a ton of money with Watson. You restock your cupboards with a lot of draft picks. I think it's a great move for the Texans. If any move works for them, I hope it's this move. As far as the Carolina Panthers go, freeing up salary cap and you saying that these guys could be in for big payday somewhere else, I don't know that any of these guys are going to be a big payday somewhere else. There are a lot of teams. I bet half the teams right now in the NFL are over the cap. So the other half have some wiggle room to work. There are going to be a lot of guys that are going to be out there in the market, and there's just not going to be enough supply of cash to fit the demand of how many people are out there. I think you're going to see a lot of guys this year, more than any time in the history of football. A lot of guys take 1 year, prove it deals. Like, I'm going to take a 1 year deal for $2 million. I got 6 last year. I'll take 2. Give me into a decent team. Let me prove that I can actually play 1 more year, put together a great year, surround me with a bunch of other guys that are good so I look even better. And next year, when the cap hopefully goes up to where it should have been, I can sign that one big mega deal for me. That's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, apparently a lot of players do not have that leverage to negotiate right now, given the financial situation. So they really have to take less money in this year and go to shorter term deals in hopes of the cap getting higher in 2 or 3 seasons. So the last person on our list is from the Denver Broncos. So they are already parting ways with AJ Bouye. So the former Pro Bowl quarterback, played just 7 games for the Broncos in 2020 and had 23 tackles and 6 defended passes. But that kind of production wouldn't cut it if the Broncos were still to pay his $13.2 million salary. So with those kind of numbers, he's an easy cut for Denver.
I'm kind of waiting for Von Miller. I think Von Miller might be a cut out there too. I know a lot of people have been talking about it, but you get rid of the corner, you get rid of the defensive end, you free up $25 million in cap space. I mean, those are 2 moves that can get you $25 million. That helps so much. Now, I did also hear a rumor that Denver was making these moves because they were going to take a shot at Deshaun Watson. But I don't see any scenario where Deshaun Watson can package together. Where Denver can package together enough to get Deshaun Watson. But I will say, I think that if Deshaun Watson went to Denver, the teams I've heard, the Jets, Denver, and I've heard Carolina. Out of any 3 of those teams, if Deshaun Watson went to Denver, Denver's loaded with talent. Like, Denver has a lot of up and coming, good young wide receivers, a loaded backfield. They've got decent tight ends. They've got an okay offensive line. Denver's a team where he could go out there right away in that really light air and that big arm. He could go out there and really make some noise really, really fast. So that would be a surprising move to me. But it's really interesting, Lance. I love the list that you put together. Each one of those guys is going to be a cap casualty as of right now, and that list is probably going to triple in size of people that have to make news. So right now we're broadcasting this for February 23rd. March 16th, So there's 23 days for teams to get themselves under the cap and try to sign some of their own free agents. So it's going to be tough. Most teams have somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 25 free agents off their team, off their 52-man roster. So it's going to be very, very tough for them to get under the salary cap. Now, we got a couple more segments coming up. Before we go any further, I just want to remind everybody, and I did mention it earlier in the show, I'll throw it out there one more time just for fun, that we do have the $2 Sports Club over at What's on Sports. And if you want to know what the $2 Sports Club is, it's lots and lots of good stuff. One of the most important things, the most important values that you're going to get out of the $2 Sports Club is you're going to get access to my brand new book, The Score Metric Secret. Now, if you don't know who I am, my name is John Todora, and I'm the sports trader, and I trade sports just like other people trade stocks. The models that I've created have literally, not figuratively, literally made people millions of dollars. If you'd be following along with the models that we prepared for this season alone with our back-tested historical analytics, you would have made yourself 97% on your money already. So imagine you put $1,000 into a bankroll and you didn't bet it all at once. You used it in small increments, just like we tell you to do. You would now have $1,900 2 months into the basketball season. And we're projected by the end of the basketball season to take that $1,000 and turn it into well over $3,000. There is no investment like this in the world today that works like this as consistently as it does. I invite you to go over to sportstradingsystems.com and take a look, or I invite you to join us in the $2 Sports Club, where you'll get access to my free book, The Score Metric Secret, and you'll also get access to something really cool because What's on Sports signed me not only to do this podcast, but to do live seminars inside the $2 Sports Club. I'll be teaching you guys all about how to use back-tested historical data so that you can start making the same kind of money that myself and my students have been making over the last few years. Join the $2 Sports Club today. There's a link in the description below, or you can go to our website, which is whatsonsports.com. Now, as we jump into our next topic, we're projecting who the top 5 free agents are for every position along the way. These are purely projections because some of these players could be possibly re-signed by their own teams. Also, these projections could change because there could be players that are released in the next few weeks. But as of right now, as of February 23rd, these are our projections for the top 5 cornerbacks that will be free agents in 2021. Lance Fernandez, the sports nerd, has the list. Lance, let's do it.
Okay, so let's get the ball rolling. So first off the list is J.C. Jackson of the New England Patriots. So he had a benefit of playing last season because the McCourties were out. They opted out of the seasons. But he did prove that he is worth the gamble for Coach Bill Belichick by making 9 interceptions and 40 tackles in his snaps. So he only earned $750,000 last season, and it's highly likely though that New England will re-sign him because the McCourties are already aging and they do need successors at that secondary. So more often than not, J.C. Jackson will be back in New England.
Yeah, and remember today too, by the way, I forgot to mention that today begins the NFL tag season. So I believe they have from now until March 6th or 7th to tag players. So somebody like JC could end up being tagged in New England. I don't see that happening, but it's possible. He's actually turned into a heck of a cornerback, actually. It'll be tough for New England to let somebody like that go because they focus so much on defense and they understand that you need at least 2, probably more likely 3 or 4 really good corners in order to put together a good defense. And without knowing who your quarterback is, I think you really have to lock down a really strong defense. I'm going to say that New England tries to make an offer, but I think this guy's going to test free agency and see what's out there.
Yeah, I believe that there will be offers for him to be signed to another team, but I guess the New England Patriots will still have the leverage coming into the 2021 season to re-sign J.C. Jackson.
Look, I always say that I think that the 4 most important positions in football right now, almost on every team, are going to be quarterback and the offensive tackle. And then on the other side of the ball, your edge rusher and your cornerback. So it's almost like, facing off against each other. You got to have a good secondary. You got to have a good pass rush. And on the other side of the ball, you got to have pass blocking and a good quarterback, and everything else kind of falls into place. So, yeah, if you're looking at somebody like this guy who last year was probably a top 10 corner, I think he's definitely should be on your list for sure. Who you got on number 4?
Okay, so second on the list, Troy Hill of the Los Angeles Rams. So he led all cornerbacks in tackles last season with 77. So he also had 3 interceptions and 1 forced fumble to his resume. But the knock against Troy Hill is that he's already 30 years old, and we know that the cornerbacks doesn't age well in a league for young people like the NFL. And also, there's a benefit of the doubt also that he was playing alongside Jalen Ramsey. So could it be that his success is because he's playing with a better cornerback on the other side of the ball, and that's why he gets those stats?
Well, it's why he gets the tackles for sure, because you're not going to throw it to Jalen Ramsey's side very much. So he probably gets a lot of targets and a lot of tackles. I think the analytics on somebody like that is really to look at the completion percentage when balls are thrown towards him. Interceptions are a great number to look at, but for me, I really love to look at completion percentage. If a cornerback is letting up, more than 50% of the passes thrown his way, he's really not doing a great job, in my opinion. In my opinion, you got to keep the receivers under 50% of the time catching the ball. Now, it is impressive that he's got all those tackles, because apparently he doesn't miss a lot of tackles. But cornerbacks start to hit their 30s, unless you're elite. Unless you're like an elite level guy where like people are like, oh man, this guy's amazing. It's a tough one. That's a tough one for me to actually swallow and say, yeah, I would love to go out and spend, $7 million on a guy who's 30 years old. I'm not going to do it because I got to lock him into a long-term contract. Now you come to me and say, hey, listen, I want a long-term contract, but give me $3 million a year over the next 3 years, especially in COVID times. Maybe we're looking at making some type of deal. If he's smart, that's what he'll look for instead of trying to break the bank, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree that no player right now, especially the lesser-known players, have the leverage actually to negotiate for their contracts. So they have to settle for less.
Well, look, I have this opinion, though, where I think that, like you look at running backs. Running backs have no value in the NFL as far as, it's not they have no value, but they have a lower value. And the reason they have a lower value is because you can go into the draft and you can grab somebody and plug a player in. It's easier to replace a player like that. So you look at running backs. Running backs need to have a very unique skill set in order to make a lot of money. Your guy like a Derrick Henry is a unique skill set. He's almost impossible to replace. You can't find another big, huge back like that runs the way Derrick Henry does. Derrick Henry is worth the money because he's a unique quantity. Are any of these corners a unique quantity that can't be replaced by somebody else? That's when you start to figure out whether or not a cornerback is worth a lot of money. Quarterbacks are the same way. There are unique quantities in these quarterbacks. Somebody like a Patrick Mahomes is irreplaceable for the things that he does. But I don't care who you put in that offense; it's not going to run as well as it does with Patrick Mahomes. A lot of guys are like that. They really just wanted to make that point really quick, and that's why corners actually are tough to replace. So just to be clear, they are tougher to replace. So they do make a little more money. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. So third on the list of free agent cornerbacks that we have is Mike Hilton of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So he played 12 games, but he had 3 sacks, 3 picks, 5 quarterback hits, and 51 tackles, and 1 forced fumble. So do you see a situation wherein he will be back in a Steelers uniform or he will be playing somewhere else?
This is very unfortunate for me to say this, but I don't think there's any chance that Mike Hilton makes it back into the Steelers uniform. And I don't think there's any chance that Mike Hilton plays to the level that he played for Pittsburgh. Now, with that being said, if I'm being 100% honest, Mike Hilton was, and this will come as a shock to a lot of people, but Mike Hilton was the best player on the Steelers defense last year. It was not TJ Watt. Mike Hilton was head and shoulders above everybody else on that defense. He did everything. He blitzed off the edge. He was great against the run. And he's a little guy, but he was great against the run. He's like literally like having like an extra linebacker out there when you go to your nickel package. He could cover the deep middle. He was great man to man. He played some great zones. He manned up on tight ends that were 6 inches taller than him. I mean, the guy was really, really, when he played, he had a shoulder injury. When he played, he was absolutely phenomenal out there. Complete game changer, changed the way that defense played. And it's going to be a huge, huge loss for Pittsburgh. To me, it's an irreplaceable loss for Pittsburgh. So I think the best thing for both parties, for Pittsburgh and for Mike Hilton, would be for Mike Hilton to re-sign with Pittsburgh. Now, unfortunately, if you're familiar at all with Pittsburgh's salary cap positioning, they have no money. So it's not going to happen. It's impossible that he'll be back. So Mike Hilton should be paid. Somebody out there is going to see that talent and see that guy and say, that's the guy right there. That's the guy that we want. So somebody should sign that guy. And by the way, somebody should also pay attention to the fact that Mike Hilton was an undrafted free agent who was picked up by the New England Patriots, cut by the Patriots, played for another team, got cut by them, and was then picked up by Pittsburgh. So you can find talent everywhere. Doesn't have to be a first-round guy. Mike Hilton is actually a stud football player, really nice dude. I wish he stays with Pittsburgh. If he has to go, I hope he gets paid a lot of money.
Yeah, and at the age of 27, so he still has his best football in front of him. So it's very evident that he did everything on the field just by his stat line. So he was everywhere, and it's hard to replace someone who covers a lot of field that way. But speaking of elite cornerbacks, so we go to our fourth name in our list. It's Patrick Peterson. So even though he missed 10 games in 2019, he came back strong in 2020. He played 99.3% of the snaps, and he had 3 picks and 61 tackles. So at 31 years old, he continues to perform this way. But is Carolina or any other team willing to bet that he can maintain this consistency for at least 2 or 3 years?
Not at the price he was getting. And it's going to be up to Patrick Peterson whether or not he wants to play anymore. Is he going to get an offer? Yeah. I believe I was looking the other day at grades for on Pro Football Focus for different players, and I believe Peterson graded out in like the 60s. He was not graded very high for being a quote-unquote shutdown corner. He is no longer a shutdown corner. He's a risk to not make it through the season anymore kind of corner. At one point, Patrick Peterson was probably the best corner in football. Now, unfortunately, that was wasted on teams that weren't really that good. Look, 32 years old. If he plays, it's going to be for a small deal. It's not going to be for league minimum, but it's going to, given the current COVID situation, unless he locks into a team that's just this close and they think they just need one more corner and we have a lot of salary cap room, like maybe the Cleveland Browns or someone like that. Unless somebody's dumb and overpays for him, I don't think he's going to get a lot of money. I think he's going to get job opportunities. I think it's going to be up to him to say, yeah, I don't want to play for $3 million this year. I don't want to play for $2 million. It'll be up to Peterson whether or not he plays, but he will get some offers.
Yeah. So his salary, he's up for like $13 million in 2020. So I guess he will not receive anything near that in 2021. No. So we wouldn't even get a franchise tag whatsoever because of his age. So I believe that a team that is, like you mentioned, one player away from being a strong contender could use him for one season and help their younger cornerbacks learn from him. So he becomes a bridge cornerback for those younger players.
Yeah, absolutely. Or he could be the guy that plays, there's a tremendous value in, and I think it's often overlooked in the NFL, but there's a tremendous value in these older guys that actually understand the game. Patrick Peterson, if you've ever heard him being interviewed, he's a very intelligent player. He seems to be a very intelligent player, at least. So guys like that will just find a way to stick around because they'll make up for what they don't have in the athletic department anymore by being smart and being, and understanding the game plan, understanding what the other team wants to do, understanding the tendencies of the wide receivers and the quarterback himself. So I think Patrick Peterson sticks around. I just don't think he makes a tremendous amount of money. Who else is on your list?
Okay, last on the list, top 5 free agent cornerbacks. Speaking of the Cleveland Browns, so it comes from their team, Terrence Mitchell. So he just finished a 3-year, $10 million deal with the Browns in a spectacular fashion, actually. So he had 4 forced fumbles as a cornerback in 2020 to go with 65 tackles. And just like Peterson, he played almost all of the snaps for the playoff contender Browns. So what do you think will happen with Terrence Mitchell moving forward?
I think Terrence Mitchell will get the same kind of contract. I think Terrence Mitchell is a 3-year, $10 million guy, maybe a 3-year, $15 million guy. He's not going to break the bank for anybody. You could sign him. He'll be a great second or even third corner. He'll definitely have a job in the NFL. You know his age? What's Mitchell's age?
He's 31.
Oof. Maybe I take that back. See, the problem is like you're not bringing in a young guy who's on a prove a contract. You're bringing in a vested veteran who really thinks, I'm 31. This is my last chance. Like, I'm not going to get a chance to make money after this. And your agent's probably telling you, hey, listen, we got to shoot big because the agent realizes this well's about to dry up. I got to make this guy as much money as I can over the next 3 years because then I'm not going to make any more money off of him. I'm saying the same thing. I'm saying 3 years in between 10 and 15 million for this guy. If he gets more, I'll be surprised. I'd be absolutely positively shocked. Great list, by the way, Lance. You've done a fantastic job of compiling these lists. If you like the information that Lance puts out, which is like always so detailed and so in depth, you can go over and read some of the stuff that he writes over at whatsonsports.com. And again, a lot of Lance's stuff is out there for free in the free section of What's on Sports, but it's also available inside the $2 Sports Club. You can read everything you want to by going to whatsonsports.com and checking out the $2 Sports Club. Now, for those of you that are watching at home, thanks so much for watching. It's great to have you guys out there. A lot of people are liking the feed today, man. A lot of people seem to be enjoying what's going on.
Indeed.
All right, let me stretch my arms out because I'm about to go on a rant right now. This is going to be one of those moments.
The room is here.
So, listen, I've got a pet peeve, and I'm going to address it right now because I just can't fucking take it anymore. I just can't take it anymore. I got this thing going on right now, Lance. Let me tell you. I've told people on the show many times in the past, many times in the past, in an effort to have full disclosure, I am a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. Now, I try to maintain no bias in this show. If the Steelers have sucked, I've said they sucked. If the Steelers have been good, I've said they've been good. If Ben's been great, I've said Ben's been great. If Ben's been bad, he's been bad. If Tomlin makes a great coaching decision, I praise him. And when he does something stupid, I am all over him. I'm fair. I'm totally fair. The Steelers should have lost to the Browns. They were shitty. They were terrible. They were no good. Now, that does not mean I think the Steelers were bad last year. I thought they were pretty good. Obviously, they were 11-0 at one point. But let me tell you something that really, really bothers me. And I'm gonna just preface this by saying this has been a pet peeve of mine for a very long time. And I touched on it earlier in the show, and I'm going to try to make this short, and I'm going to ask you what you think, and then we'll move on to the mailbag. But Lance, I cannot freaking take it anymore with these national reporters taking a small clip of something someone said or a tweet and trying to turn it into a 7-hour segment that I got to sit through when they're completely and totally freaking wrong. So let me take you back 2 years ago. Pittsburgh has one of the most explosive offenses in football, led by Ben Roethlisberger, sidecard by one of the greatest wide receivers of all time, Antonio Brown, and possibly the best running back in football at that time, Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell held out for a contract, held out for an entire year, which was his right to do. He was allowed to do that. He held out for a contract. Antonio Brown lost his mind. Earlier in the year, I called it before it happened. I was following him on social media. I started to see his posts getting weirder and weirder, the things he was saying. He came into camp. He may have had some dumb interview with reporters where he was like, you guys don't like me anyway. And I was like, this guy's losing his mind a little bit. Being rich makes you a little crazy and eccentric. He's gone beyond that. Something's going to happen this year. This is going to be a Terrell Owens moment. Everyone thought I was crazy, but it happened. Antonio Brown has a blow-up moment in a practice. All hell breaks loose. The narrative is now, at this moment in time, the narrative is Ben Roethlisberger is bad. Antonio Brown is good. He's the good one. Ben Roethlisberger is a racist because Antonio Brown said that he very well could be a racist. We ignore the fact that Ben Roethlisberger's best friend on the team is Marquise Pouncey, who last time I checked was a black man. Le'Veon Bell held out for a contract, and Le'Veon Bell wanted more money. His problem was with the front office of the Pittsburgh Steelers, which again was his right to do. You can ask for whatever kind of money you want to. But then the media took the Antonio Brown story and turned it into, oh yeah, I bet that's why Le'Veon Bell didn't play last year too. He's tired of Ben Roethlisberger's shit also. What the hell are we talking about? That went on for an entire year. For an entire year we had to hear this. It was completely and totally false on its face. There was nothing close to it being true. We listened to it for an entire offseason until Antonio Brown got to the Oakland Raiders and everybody realized, holy shit, this guy's nuts. Yeah, he's nuts. He's out of his mind. You picked the wrong guy in the fight. So people switched the story 50%. 50% of the story switch. People all admitted that Antonio Brown was crazy, but never went back and actually said, hey, maybe we were wrong about Ben. Maybe we don't think, maybe he wasn't the problem with Antonio Brown. Maybe Antonio Brown was the problem with Antonio Brown and not Ben Roethlisberger. Maybe Le'Veon Bell, who held out for a whole year and then signed for a mega deal with the New York Jets, maybe his problem wasn't with Ben Roethlisberger. Maybe his problem was what we thought it was the whole damn time. He wanted more money. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe it had nothing to do with Ben Roethlisberger. So time goes by. Ben Roethlisberger comes out the next year after AB leaves. Unfortunately, he has the arm injury. He doesn't play all year long. Ben Roethlisberger decides to grow a beard and wear thick coats on the sideline because he's not playing. The narrative becomes, oh my God, Ben is fat. Ben is fat. Can you believe how fat Ben is? Can you believe how fat he is? Never mind, Lance, that we can now see pictures at this very moment when all this is happening, of Ben Roethlisberger not wearing the fucking jacket, looking pretty slim. Looking like a pretty slim guy, actually. Looking like he's like almost a little skinny. But he's fat. They keep saying he's fat because they're too dumb to realize he's wearing a coat. Now, maybe they're not too dumb, but it's not a good story to say he's wearing a coat and has a long beard. So, bring us back to this year. Ben Roethlisberger shows up. He shaves his beard. He goes out. He's throwing the football. They're showing the videos. Guy looks like he's in pretty good shape to me. Just out there on a T-shirt throwing footballs to some of his receivers. Looks like he's pretty slim. Looks like he's in pretty good shape. Story comes out because Jay Glazer says Ben Roethlisberger would rather spend the offseason just doing yoga every once in a while and drinking a beer. Okay, maybe that's true. But look at him. Does he look like he's out of shape to you? He's not fat. He looks like he's a pretty slim, athletic guy. Now, is he Tom Brady? Is he out there doing Pilates, inviting people to join him? No. But, he's also a very private guy. He doesn't have social media. He does have social media, but somebody runs it for him and just posts like charity things and stuff like that. There's never any statements from Ben Roethlisberger or photos of Ben Roethlisberger from his own Instagram accounts or from his own Twitter accounts. That's not what he does. So he doesn't stay in touch with people to create his own narrative. But these narratives are constantly being created. That brings us to where we are right now. General manager comes out and says, at this moment, Ben Roethlisberger is our quarterback. We're trying to work it out. All of a sudden, the narrative is Pittsburgh doesn't want him. They're trying to get rid of him. Pittsburgh's doing this. Are you guys out of your mind? Is the national media out of their minds? That's absolutely, positively insane. I got a comment down here from Jack Sparrow. Views have replaced news. Yes. It's happened in politics, it's happened with social issues, and it's crossed over to sports, and it's poisonous. And I'm only talking from a perspective of a Steeler fan, but I'm certain that every one of you out there who has a team that you truly care about, who follows the team, who understands the team. Now, we're not in the locker room. I'm not going to go so far as to say we're in the locker room. But I'm going to tell you that if you follow a team long enough, and if you understand the patterns of people and how people behave, you will realize that eventually the things the national media tells us are completely and totally wrong. Derek Carr has still not been traded. It's been 4 years now since John Gruden took over, and Derek Carr was this close to being traded every goddamn minute that they talk about it. He still hasn't been traded. It's been 4 years. When's it going to happen? When is it going to happen? I'll tell you when. Never. It's never going to happen because they're full of shit. Somebody said it, somebody repeated it, and somebody reported it. And that's how it works in today's world. And that's why I'm so happy that we're doing something different over at whatsonsports.com. This was not meant to be a promotion for that, but it just kind of led into it. To me, that's what we're trying to create over there, which is something completely and totally different, something that isn't dependent on the bullshit that we hear everywhere, but is instead dependent on a little bit of common sense and a little bit of like, hey, maybe that's not true because I can see it's not true. I don't have to listen. When I was a kid, there was a story. It was called, what was it called? It was called All the King's Clothes or The King's New Clothes, something like that. And the story was the king would walk outside every day in front of all of his disciples, all of his people, and he would walk outside every day and he would be naked. Yeah. And the disciples had to play along and they had to say, well, look, wow, that's a really nice robe you have on today, sir. Because they had to keep the crazy king happy because if they didn't, he would chop their head off. And that's what we live with today. Stephen A. Smith goes on TV and whatever he says, we have to believe. Because if we don't believe Stephen A. Smith, if we don't agree with Max Kellerman, who's a douchebag, if we don't agree with these guys when they go on TV or we see them on YouTube, we are suddenly the bad guy who doesn't want to follow along with what we're being told. Well, I'm here to tell you one thing very quickly, and then we'll wrap up. I'll let Lance address this if you'd like to, that you have to stop listening to what they're telling you. You have to. Whether it's the rumors that you hear or the stories that they're trying to push for you or the gambling information that they're giving you, they are just trying to fill TV time. There's no way possible they even believe half the things that they're saying. It's just impossible at some points. So I just wanted to go into that. I'm sorry it took so long. That was literally like 12 minutes of your life you'll probably never get back. Lance, wait, you got anything to say about the mainstream media? How do you feel about them?
Yeah, well, you said it very thoroughly already, John. But I do agree with what you're mentioning. But let's always remember that for mainstream media, there's always two questions that you always have to ask when you get information from them: who's speaking and why. So there's always vested interest behind these media organizations because they are controlled by corporations who have their own interests. So that's the problem with the big news outfits. So let's say something like a Fox is always conservative, so they would always lean that way with their reporting, even in the news. So in that way, they slant the objective of the news towards a more conservative tone in order to foster a conservative thought from their main viewers. So that's a problem already. So where's the objectiveness there? That's a problem now that it's easy to get information from social media, from videos, whatever posts from
100%.
whatever athletes. So it's easy
100%.
for you to get information now, but where is the discernment process going? Where are we? Are we like verifying the facts enough? Are we really analyzing it enough? Are we thoroughly assessing who is speaking and where it's coming from?
No.
So that's the problem with the mainstream media.
And the problem lies in us. The problem lies in us. This isn't about politics, but you brought it up. If you want to talk about it, just touch on it really quick. And I think both sides of the media when it comes to politics are full of shit. They're both have an agenda. You shouldn't listen to any of it. But for 4 years, while one guy was president, the media on the left told us that he stole the election and that was fine. It was proven wrong. He came out whenever he lost and said that the election was stolen, and suddenly it was like a crime. So are we too dumb to realize what they did to us? Why was it okay to say it then and not okay to say it now? I personally think it's not okay to say it anytime. I didn't agree with them saying it then. I didn't agree with the next guy saying it. No one should have said that. No media outlet should have that type of power. And no personality that we allow to speak to us on television about our sports, our politics, anything should have that type of influence over us. They are not the know-all be-all. They don't know everything. If they can't present you with facts, then you're in trouble. And this is actually something, I wrote the book, which again, you guys can see, you can get a link in the description to go check out my book. My book talks about this with sports gambling. Sports gambling, one of the biggest poisons in sports gambling is listening to the people on TV tell you the trends that are happening. If you follow the trends that you see on TV, you will lose 70% of the time. I guarantee it. I'll bet you money on it that you'll lose 70% of the time. Whatever they tell you on TV is usually wrong. It's usually way off and way wrong. And just because you're hearing it again and again and again on a loop, and they're all repeating the same thing, doesn't make it right. It just makes it fucking wronger. More wrong. I don't know, whatever it is. It's worse. Thank you very much. All right, that's it. My blood pressure actually rose. I can't talk about it anymore. That's a pet peeve for me. I wanted to touch on the subject really quick. Let's jump over. We got our one last segment to take over. Today we're going to be talking about the mailbag. Over at What's on Sports, we allow you guys to Lance, I'm so hot. Oh my God, this is like, I brought my blood pressure up just talking about all that. We go over to What's on Sports. What'sonsports.com is our website. You can go over there. You can send us questions. We'll be glad to answer them for you. Let's go to our questions right now. Let's dive into the mailbag. Lance, what do we got?
Well, first of all, good for you to let some steam off before we go to the mailbag. So first question from Danny of Springfield, Illinois. So hello, Danny, if you're watching. Where do you think Mitch Trubisky will play next season?
I think Mitchell Trubisky ends up in Chicago again. That's my opinion. I think Mitchell Trubisky just ends up right back in Chicago again. I don't think they have a place to put him. I don't think that they have anybody out there that's going to reach out and spend a lot of money for him. There aren't a lot of quarterback positions that are actually open right now. If there were, and if Mitchell Trubisky was an actual free agent, I think Mitchell Trubisky would be someone that somebody would take a chance on. Second overall pick at one point, obviously a talented guy, has not shown that he's that guy in Chicago, but no one on the offensive side in Chicago has really shown himself to be that level of superstar. So maybe it's a system thing. Look, you look at Trubisky. Trubisky has all the same qualities as a Josh Allen. Like he is a Josh Allen clone. He can run, good athlete, good arm, I don't know if he's got the head Josh Allen does, but Josh Allen learned a lot about himself, became a better quarterback outside of the facility. And maybe Trubisky isn't doing that right now, or maybe he's not doing it with the right guy. But Josh Allen went away for a preseason, for an offseason, and came back a completely different quarterback. And it was because they worked on his mechanics, they worked on his head a little bit, they got him in the proper headspace to be the guy he needs to be. His natural leadership took over. The coordinators were smart enough to develop an offense around him. I don't think Trubisky's had that. I would love to see him go back to Chicago for one single reason and one single reason only. The name Trubisky is perfect for the city of Chicago. It is such a perfect name. If you know anything about the region, Trubisky just sounds like a Chicago guy. He should definitely go back to Chicago. That's my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, I believe that he will end up back to the Bears fold because the quarterback market has already dried up, essentially, because Russell Wilson isn't going anywhere. Even Aaron Rodgers is not going anywhere, although it was speculated that they might be on the move. But here we are in February, and those guys are staying put. So Mitchell Trubisky has no other way to go but to go back to the Bears. Now, the question is, how much are they going to offer Mitchell Trubisky, because he's actually a free agent? Will they allow him to go under the franchise tag? Will they sign him for 2 or maybe even 3 years? So that would be the real issue for Mitch Trubisky and the Chicago Bears moving forward.
Yeah. Look, this is a crazy offseason, man. It's really going to come down to manipulating the money, and I love this part of the year. I really do. So this is going to be so interesting for me. I mean, we call you the sports nerd, but I am the numbers nerd of the sports industry. I love the numbers. I cannot wait to see what's going to happen with some of this stuff. It's going to be so interesting. This next month's going to blow my mind away. Let's go to our next question.
Okay, so from Christian of St. Louis, which team will end up with the worst record in 2021?
I am going to say that the team that will be the worst, I should read these questions before we start the show. I'm going to say the team that's going to be the worst team in football will be the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans will be left with absolutely destroyed, and they will be the worst team in football. That is my prediction.
Well, I will still bank on the Jacksonville Jaguars being the worst team next season, even though they will have Trevor Lawrence in the fold, because he's the presumptive number 1 draft pick, and they have 11 draft picks in 2021, but we don't know yet how many of those picks will become hits. So they might be misses. Plus the fact that Jacksonville is not an attraction or a destination rather for free agents because of what has happened over the years. So they are stuck really rebuilding through the draft, and they're lucky if they get anybody from free agency, given their high salary cap or high value that they can still spend for the salary cap, around $77 million.
Yeah, I disagree with you a little bit on the free agency thing. I really think they have an opportunity to really get some decent free agents in there. I think that a lot of guys have played for that coach before. And I think that there's an opportunity out there for somebody to say, I'd love to go back and play for my college coach. I love playing for Urban Meyer. I love playing for Urban Meyer at Ohio State. That's a great opportunity to go back and really just bring my career first full circle. And, there's no state tax. Jacksonville's a nice town. I think there's an opportunity there for Jacksonville to be a lot better than a lot of people think they're going to be, especially because, listen, buddy, they got money to spend. And there are a lot of older guys. They're going to be looking for a last payday, and Jacksonville's going to be able to give them that last payday. A brand new culture. Especially if you go back to one that you're familiar with, Urban Meyer. I think you're going to see a surprise in Jacksonville. When free agency opens up, there's going to be a flurry of guys that end up back down there in Jacksonville that want to play with the number 1 guy, that want to play for Urban Meyer, that want to go down to Florida and retire down there like old people do. I think it's going to be a shocker how many people go down there. Just my opinion.
Yeah. Do you see them like a wild card team next year or so? The Jaguars.
I don't see them. Look, I don't see them as a wild card team. I still think they're going to be a losing team. I mean, I don't want to burst the bubble there, but I still think they're going to be a losing team. They're in a tough division. It's not an easy division that they're in. So if you're looking at it from that standpoint, I think that Jacksonville's still going to be a losing team. I don't think they'll be the worst team in football. That's what the question was. Who's going to be the worst team in football? And I told you I think it's going to be the Houston Texans because I think Watson's going to end up leaving. I think that team's going to be in disarray. It's going to be very tough for them to keep the rest of those guys happy. There's going to be some dissension there. I'm not sold on the coach that they got. I'm not sold on the actual franchise being able to mitigate all the disasters that have happened there. So overall, I think the worst case scenario for the Texans is to be the worst team in football. Let's do our last question and wrap this up.
Okay, last question comes from Ferry from Minnesota. So hello, Ferry. Will 2021 be the year when the Dolphins finally reach the playoffs again?
This is an easy question. 10,000% yes. The Dolphins will 10,000% make the playoffs. They very well could be the surprise team in the regular season that shocks everybody. I think Buffalo is a prime candidate to take a step back. But Buffalo is a prime candidate to take a step back. It's going to be very hard to be 13-3 again. Buffalo showed a lot of chinks in their armor. If they can't bring in the pieces that they need to make themselves into a better team, if they can't figure out how to have a running game and be a more balanced team, Buffalo's in a tough division. I think the Jets will be a little bit better and a little bit tougher team. I think New England will be a better team. I think the Dolphins are on the come up. They got a lot of young guys. They got a lot of really good corners. They got a quarterback who's going to be exponentially better this year. They're going to surround him with a lot more weapons. I think the Dolphins are on the come up, and the Dolphins have a very good chance to not just make the playoffs, to not just have a winning record, Lance, but to be among the best teams in the AFC because they got coaching too.
Yeah, indeed. Brian Flores has proven himself to be one of the better coaches in the NFL right now. And the thing about having good records, usually in the coming season or in the next season, they give you a tougher schedule. So Buffalo might have a tough time repeating as AFC East champions alone. So that's an opportunity for the Dolphins to swoop in and be the top of that division, given that there's still uncertainty in New England and New York is still miles away from being a contender. So it could be a 100%. Good opportunity for the Dolphins, especially with what they do in the third overall pick. Most likely they will get a wide receiver, be it Chase from LSU or even DeVonta Smith from Alabama. So that helps Tua have that home run hitter, that speedster that can stretch the field and for him to just throw bombs downfield.
Yeah, I like the kid from LSU. You pair up the kid from LSU with the kid they have there right now, and they've got two really big 6'2" wide receivers who can body up, give Tua big targets. I think that's the position that you go in. The only other way I can see the Dolphins going is grabbing the tight end out of Florida. He's another weapon because he's not really a tight end. He's almost like a Travis Kelce type of hybrid type of player. I think maybe you do that, and then maybe you go later in the round and get your wide receiver. Like that's where I'd like to see the Dolphins go. Like personally, to me, I go after my tight end right out of the top of the draft. I get a talent that's unlike anything else in the draft. Third round, I come back. Maybe I get one more wide receiver. Maybe I get something in the off season. Somebody wants to come down, make a little money, get some sun, stay out of the state taxes, get away from COVID because it's a little bit less COVID down there. That's what I think could possibly happen with the Miami Dolphins. Steelers are my favorite team. I lived in Miami for 20 years. I've been to probably 6 dozen Miami Dolphin games. I happen to be a follower of the Miami Dolphins. I never say I'm a fan. I save that for the Steelers. So I wish nothing but the best for them. My name is John Todora. I am the sports trader, and I probably shouldn't have drank that Red Bull before the show. Over here, that guy right over there is Lance Fernandez. He's the sports nerd, and we have been the What's on Sports podcast. We had a lot of listeners today. For those of you that listened at home on the podcast networks, we really appreciate it. Wherever you're listening, leave a like, leave a comment, leave a subscribe. If you watched all the way to the end, obviously you love us. So go over to what'sonsports.com and join the $2 Sports Club right now today. That's it. That's all. We're out of here.